with some dynamite. Soon the boys were able to walk into Jewel Cave instead of crawl. Upon entering, for the first time, they saw crystal formations, much like those here, hidden in cave walls.
Hello again. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and today we are going to be talking about self-study for technology professionals. So this is a big question that comes up nowadays. You know, so many people feel that they don't have to go to college in order to get into the technology field. They don't want to go out there and go to boot camps or do any of that type of thing. They just want to go out there and they will do self-study. The idea is I'm going to go out there, I'm going to learn all this stuff of my own, and then I am just going to be absolutely amazing. Amazing. How can I do that? Well, the thing for you to know is truly now in the modern world that self-study is a lot easier and a lot less expensive than it used to be. Back when I got into the technology world, the reality was, yeah, you could buy some books, but even the books were going to be expensive, at least $50 a pop. And then you probably weren't really going to understand what the books were talking about, so you'd have to go to some kind of boot camp. And back then, things like Microsoft boot camps range anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000, right? So thankfully, the world has changed. In the modern world, obviously, you can go to some place like YouTube and you can learn a lot of stuff, which is an absolutely great thing. The problem being is back in the old days when you actually had to write a check before you went into a program, you had to think about it a little bit, right? You know, if you're going to write a $5,000 check, or you're going to write a $10,000 check, or you're going to go $50,000 into debt, you're going to think about it a little bit. Sadly, people still don't think about it enough, but at least you're going to think about what you're doing a tiny little bit. The issue is when people go out there and they see all this free stuff available, they just kind of dive in. They just like, I'm going to dive into this and I'm going to become amazing. And then they dive in, and instead of like diving into a pool and swimming, it's more like they dive into quicksand and then they sink and then they die. And it's just a really horrible thing, right? Because again, as I talk about in a lot of my videos, I repeat the same phrases to you guys again and again and again. And as I will say, you cannot fail. Well, it's very difficult to fail. But you can give up. The problem with most people when they try to get into the technology field and they start going in and they start self-studying is not that they fail. The problem is they dive in to this field with self-studying. They don't know what direction they're going in. They don't understand what they're supposed to do. They slog through it for a month or two or 6 even, but then they don't really feel like they're getting anywhere, and then therefore they give up. Again, they do not fail. Failure is you have a heart attack. Failure is you break your back. Failure is your spouse has cancer a couple of times and therefore you have to stop working. That's failure, you know what I'm saying? Failure is you're a startup company in Greece and all of a sudden your prime minister decides to start screwing around with the Eurozone. That's failure. You sitting there, slogging through, trying to learn stuff, and then at the end of the day just closing the book and saying, screw it. That's giving up. That is not failure. So again, one of those things just to keep in mind whenever we're talking about this. So the first thing that we have to talk about if you're going to go out there and self-study, I mean, the first question that has to be answered is, what are you working on? No, seriously, what are you working on? You're working on something, right? You're playing with something, you're designing something, you're developing something, you're installing something, anything at all. And this is the biggest problem with newbies. This is the biggest problem with people trying to get into the field is they don't really grasp what our field is about. Our field fundamentally down to the core of its being is about solving problems. Therefore, if you're going to come into this field, especially if you're going to self-study, you have to come into this field with a problem. Literally, the first thing you need to do before you even start thinking about self-study, before you worry about Ruby on Rails or Active Directory or hybrid cloud services or any of this crap, the first thing you have to do is you have to come up with a problem, a real problem preferably, that needs to be solved and can be solved using technology. Again, using coding, using cloud services, using, I don't know, webcams, something like that. That is the number one thing. The biggest problem that I see with newbies that come in is that they don't have a problem to solve, so they really have no context for what they're learning. Context is probably the most important thing when you're learning technology. It's not about understanding ports. It's not about understanding TCP/IP. It's not about understanding functions or values or Boolean or any of that crap, right? It's about context. What problem are you trying to solve? And then what technology are you trying to use to solve that problem? And then how do you configure, deploy, blah, 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 that technology to solve the problem? If you have the context, right? I have a store that is getting broken into. Therefore, I want to go and get surveillance cameras. So then you start studying surveillance cameras. Then when you start studying surveillance cameras, you'll learn about the difference between NVRs and DVRs. And then you'll learn about the new cameras nowadays that have all that kind of crap built in. And then you'll start to understand that. And then you'll go to your client or you'll go to yourself and you'll think about it. And you're like, well, what's really important here? Is resolution what's really important here? Is network availability really important here? What's really important here? And then you'll figure that out. And then you'll go and you'll learn a little bit more, and then you'll learn a little bit more, learn a little bit more, and then you will learn based upon the problem that you're solving for. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to go out there and you have to find a problem, any problem. And no, it is not okay to give the excuse, well, Eli, I'm a newbie. Nobody trusts me to fix anything. Right? That's not an acceptable excuse. That's not an excuse that will fly. If you have that excuse, fine, go be a florist, right? This is our field. Our field is about solving problems fundamentally. So if you do not even have the wherewithal to go out there and find a problem to solve, you're just not going to be successful. Go be a florist. Now, when I talk about a problem to solve, realize that a lot of times the same technology, the same systems that are being used in the enterprise, that are being used in massive startup companies, can in fact be used in a small environment. Right? So, if you think that you want to learn Linux, right? You go, Eli, I want to learn. I get this a lot from people. I want to learn Linux. Well, then think about what Linux can do, right? What is Linux going to do? Linux, you can build a web server with Linux. Well, do you really want to build a web server? And then it's like you go through and then like, oh, hey, I could create a file server with Linux, right? And so if I created a file server with Linux, I could store all those BitTorrented videos that I get, from the internet onto that server, and then I could access it from anywhere in the house. And then you sit there and you think about, okay, so what do I need? So I need a physical box in order to build it. Then I need to figure out a distribution. Do I use Ubuntu, or do I use Fedora, or do I use CentOS? Then once you figure that out, then you go in and you figure out FTP, and you figure out all that stuff, right? That is a problem. You sit there and think, you know what, it would be really great to have a server in my house so that I could share out all these files. And the thing is, if you start doing research and you start learning about it, that's where you'll learn about, you learn about Linux, and you'll learn about the different distributions of Linux. You'll learn about Ubuntu and CentOS and Fedora and all that. Not only that, but you might go out there and you'll learn about things like FreeNAS, which is a network attached storage free operating system. You'll learn all of these things, and then you know what problem you're trying to solve for, and then you just go through and you figure it out. Again, you go to the church group that you're in, or you go to the athletic association or group that you're in, and you see if they need a website. And then you go out there and you're like, okay, these people need a website. How am I going to build a website? And then you go out and you do a little research. I could build it by hand. I could use WordPress. I could use Squarespace. I could use these things. And then you go from there. So the first thing that you have to do is find problems to solve. And again, there is no excuse for not being able to do this. If you cannot find problems to solve that require a technology solution in the modern world, you just need to leave this profession. You're not even in this profession yet. That's great. You don't even need to give back your uniform. You don't need to give back your uniform. You don't need to give back your keys, because you weren't even in the profession to begin with. If you can't figure out problems to solve, you're not even one of us to you didn't even cross the threshold or anything, right? Just give up, walk away. So the first thing is you need to go out there and you need to find the problem that you're going to solve. The next thing that you need to do, if you really want to be in this profession, is figure out how much money you are willing to spend to learn this kind of information. What is your budget? Again, I'm not telling you what your budget should be. I'm not getting into an argument about, size of budgets here, but I will say, point blank, you need to have a budget of some sort. Now, there's a lot of people out there that say, Eli, I should be able to learn all this stuff for free. Don't. Again, I'm a pragmatic fellow. I don't know about what you should be able to do. I just know in the real world that is not going to happen. At some point, you are going to need to throw down money. Again, thankfully, it's not the bad old days like when I was learning a lot of this stuff where you had to go to $3,000 a pop boot camps. Again, I went to Red Hat Linux for Windows administrators. $3,000. You know, MySQL administration, $3,000. PHP, I think that was $2,500. NT 4.0 boot camp was $5,000. NT 2000 boot camp was $10,000, right? So that's how it was in the old days. So thankfully, if you're going to be self-studying, you don't have to worry about prices that high, but you are going to have to put money out. I would say that you should budget probably up to about $1,000, and there's a reason for this, right? And this isn't me just being like, oh, you should pay for things, kids. It's just how reality works. The first thing is that not all the things that you need to learn will be free. At some point, you're going to need to do things like buy books. Now, in the beginning, don't worry about books. A lot of you guys are really fascinated by books. It's really cute, but it's not the modern world, right? When I used to do my old videos, and behind me used to be that huge selection of books, you don't know how many people I get emails from asking me what those books are. And I keep trying to tell them, those books basically should go to Goodwill. I just set them there when I moved into my house and never got around to giving them to Goodwill. And then they made a good set piece. Those books are a set piece. So for the most part, you don't go into this field now. You don't go into self-study and buying books. You used to, not now. What books are good for is once you have an idea of what you need to learn, like say if you're going to be learning coding, or if you're going to be learning, Active Directory and organizational units and all that kind of stuff, that information gets foolishly specific. Right? In order to write a function in whatever programming language, you have to be able to write it like specifically. There can't be any typos in that. So what books are good for is once you've already decided, I want to become an expert in Python, or I want to become an expert in Ruby, whatever you decide, .NET, fine. Then you go out and you spend that $50 or $100 on a book or a couple of books, just so you have them as documentation that is sitting right beside you when you're learning how to do things. What I have found in life is I own a Kindle. I've been reading out of Kindle for, I got the first generation Kindle like a month after it came out, so I've been reading all my books and all that on there for years. But still, for technical stuff, I find books just to be a lot easier. The reason is you can kind of like bend the pages down, and then when you're going to write a function, or you're going to do something, the pages that you need are already dog-eared, and so you can open it up and go, and it's very easy to scroll through. I just find it a lot easier than even computers or things like Kindles anymore. So that's the first thing, is at some point you're going to need to go out and you're probably going to need to buy a couple of books. Again, it's not the old days, again, how I used to have 1,000 books, or however many, 30 books behind me. You're not going to need 30 books, but you're going to need 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, $20 to $50 a piece. That adds up. Again, not huge money, but that's going to cost you money. The next thing that you're going to need, that you should have some money for, is if you do need to pay for training. Again, once you get into very specific things, you find that there usually is a price tag for it. So like if I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you guys about self-study, for things like this, you normally can get that for free. For a lot of stuff out there, you can get for free. But once you start going into things that get closer to certification, once you start getting like into Cisco, into CCNA territory or CCNP territory, or you're getting into like Ruby or programming languages where you have to get a little more specific, a lot of times the free material that is available just isn't really good for that. Right? And one of the things that you have to think about is at the end of the day, as a professional, you only have 2 resources. You only have 2 real resources. You think you have all these other resources, but you only have 2. You have time and you have money. Right? So when you're starting out, you have far more time than you do money. Now, as you're going along in your career, hopefully the idea is you start to get more money than time. So the idea is that in the beginning, you may be willing to spend a lot of time trying to figure something out because you don't have enough money just to pay to get it fixed. Well, as things go, you're going to hopefully start to have more money, and then it just makes more sense just to pay for something. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the thing. Like once you start getting a little higher up in these in material and things that you're learning, that's when you go to places like Udacity, that's when you go to places like CPT Nuggets, that's when you go to places like Pluralsight. These are online education portals, but they're going to cost you a few bucks. CPT Nuggets, I think, cost you $100 per month. Pluralsight charges you anywhere between $30 to like $80 per month, and Udacity charges, I think, like up to $200 per month for their micro degrees or whatever they're called, right? And so the thing to just keep in mind is if you're really going to be in this field, you need that money. You need some money in the bank account in order to pay for those things. Because the issue that you're going to run into is if you're trying to self-study all with free material, like I say, at a certain level, it's just going to start to get really cloudy, and it's going to start to just be difficult to understand what people are talking about. So you can go to Codecademy.com. I think it's Codecademy.com, right? Which is like a free, they teach you PHP programming and Python programming and JavaScript programming and HTML, but they only send you through like 13 basically classes for it. Right? Once you need to go through 14 and above, they simply don't have anything. So the issue is, once you get past that basic level, there's a lot of stuff out there for learning the basic information. But then once you go past that, then you're just gonna have to put a few bucks down. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. If you're not willing to put a few dollars down for your own education, as I talked about in another video, then that means you're worthless. And again, that's not a derogatory statement. That literally means your worth is zero. If you are not willing to invest money in yourself, why in the hell would anybody invest anything in you? I mean, it's just a simple question, right? Just as a logical question there. If you, theoretically, are the most important person in the world to you, and you won't invest in yourself, then why in the world would anybody else give you money? Why in the world would anybody else invest anything in you, right? So you have to think about what your budget is. Again, I would argue up to $1,000, but again, it depends on what area you're in, so on and so forth. The other thing too is it depends on what subject area you decide to go into with technology. So are you going to go into networking? Are you going to go into system administration? Are you going to go into coding? And the thing that you have to think about there is that you will then also have to buy certain products simply be able to do what you need to do, right? So if you're going to start building out networks, you need patch cables, you need switches, you need routers. Even if you go to like, what is it called, Server Monkey? You can go to places and buy used equipment, used Cisco equipment relatively inexpensively. But again, it's relatively inexpensively. You still got to throw a few bucks down, right? If you're going to do system administration and you're working on clusters, that's a big thing. If you're going to be doing system administration in the modern world, clusters, having the servers all be able to communicate with each other, you just simply need servers to be able to communicate with each other. Even if you do virtualization, you still need one beast of a server that you can virtualize 10 servers on it. Again, everybody has this idea. They're like, well, Eli, I don't need to buy 10 computers anymore because I can just virtualize them all on one. And it's like, fair enough, but if you're going to virtualize, let's say 10 Windows servers on one box, you need a lot of resources to do that. Probably anywhere between 16 to probably 32 gigs of RAM, to be honest with you. You need a hard drive, at least a solid-state hard drive that can keep up at the very least. You probably need a RAID something configuration. You need the processing power. Again, even if you're doing virtualization, even if you're doing it on the cheap, you still have to pay money. Again, that's one thing to really emphasize with you guys is the price of things has come down significantly, massively, exponentially since when I got into this field, a long time ago, back in, like I say, late 90s, early 2000s. The thing is, just because it's come down exponentially doesn't mean it has in fact gotten to zero. So that's the other reason you need to have money, is so that you can buy things if you need them. Do you need to buy a little server? Do you need to buy switches? Do you need to buy routers? Do you need to buy a better computer? One of the ironic things, actually, again, as I will tell you guys, is if you really want to make money, you should go into programming. For the most part, if you want to do coding, you don't really need, all you need is a basic computer to do coding on. But let's say you have a laptop, it's old, it's failing, it has a 5400 RPM drive in it, and it's a real pain in the ass to work with. Again, you may even just simply have to buy a laptop. It's not a huge price, $500-600. I'm not telling you have to go out and buy a Mac Pro, though if you can, do it. But I'm not saying you have to. But it's that kind of thing. And one of the issues that a lot of people run into is, again, they go to YouTube, they see all this free stuff out there, and they go, oh, I can just learn this for free. And it's like, you can learn this stuff relatively inexpensively, but no, in fact, you cannot learn it for free. So the first thing is you find your problem. If you don't have a problem, just go the hell away, right? I mean, that's how it is. And again, I'm not saying you have to go to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company to find a problem. You can go to your grandma and find a problem. You can see what problem you personally have. You can see, you know, whatever. Go out there again. Go to a church group. Go to somebody. Somebody has a problem. If you, again, just learn how to go out there and find problems. Then you find the problem. Then you figure out again what your budget is to learn things. You know, again, I would say about $1,000 probably. $1,000 might last you a year or two, but at least put $1,000 down. Now the next thing to think about is that you're not going to go diving in to learning the wide world of technology. Now one of the things that most people, most noobs, don't realize when they dive into the wide world of technology is that this is an absolutely and utterly massive world. Massive. I don't know, it feels like I should be able to make a video game reference there, but I'm not cool enough with video games. Anyways, it is just a massive world. You know, the funniest thing in the world is when you see a noob and they're interviewing for like the first or second time, and the interviewer says, "So, what do you want to do?" And the person says, "Computers?" And I know how stupid that is because I said that way back when, right? And the problem is again, most people getting in this field do not understand how vast it is. It is fundamentally darn near impossible to know everything, right? Even all the skills that I have, you know, if you look at my videos and I do VoIP and I do some coding and I do Microsoft and I do networking and all that, one thing you have to understand about me is I've had a very weird career. That's not really how it normally goes. Normally how it goes is you find your one subject area and you basically stick with it. You become a Windows Server Administrator, you get really good at Windows administration, and then you go and learn Linux administration, right? And then you become like a systems administrator. You focus on networking, so then you go out there and you really hammer on Cisco equipment. Maybe once you start learning enough Cisco equipment, you then also learn Juniper and some other stuff. You go out there and learn coding, you focus on Ruby and JavaScript and HTML, you get good enough at that, then you think, you know, Java seems pretty good. You go. So most of the time, most people basically focus on one area because the technology world is so utterly massive. So one of the big issues and why people give up, don't fail, they give up, is because they dive in, they start watching these free videos, they start taking these free classes, and then it just kind of blows their mind, right? Because they're like, how in the hell am I ever going to learn all of this? And here's the thing, you're not. Don't worry about it, because you're not going to learn all of it. What you're going to do, right, is you've got that problem. You know how I was talking about that problem a little while ago? You have that problem. What you're going to do is you're going to take that problem, and you're going to look at that problem, and you're going to think, what do I need to know to be able to solve that problem? And then you're going to go, and then you're going to start learning the material directly correlated to that problem and go from there. If you just try to learn technology, if you just try to learn computers, just give up now, because I'm saving you 6 months. 6 months from now you're going to give up, because it is just too I mean, it's just a massive field. So the problem is people dive in and then they just don't. And that's the thing, is they have no context to understand how things connect together. So they're trying to build a local file server, and yet they're watching videos on Microsoft Azure. And you're like, well, yeah, Azure is servers and it's cloud, but Azure really doesn't have a whole hell of a lot to do with a Linux file server. And that's a problem. People don't understand that. So what you need to do is you need to find that problem. You got that problem, and then you start going out and you go to YouTube. YouTube is a great place to start. You go to YouTube and you're like, basically, so you say, I want to build a file server, right? That's pretty easy. And so what you do is you go to YouTube and you literally put into YouTube, not Google, YouTube, build file server. And I bet you there's going to be a dozen or more videos that pop up, and then you're going to click on one, right? And then you click on that one, and somebody's going to start talking about who the hell knows what. And while they're talking, you're going to start taking notes. And this is the important thing. Every concept you do not understand, every word you do not understand, what you do is you don't stop the video right there. You just let the video play and you take notes. What is FTP? What is a port? What is an IP port? What is this? What is that? And you write that down. And then when it's done, you go and you simply do Google searches to figure out what these things are talking about. What is FTP? It's file transfer protocol, blah, 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 blah. What is this? Blah, 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 blah. What is this? Blah, 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 blah. What is this? Blah, blah. Because here's, again, one of the big issues when people try to dive into the technology field. Our field is one of the few fields that professional fields that you'll ever get into where you really do dive in the middle. Right? So most fields, basically you build yourself up from the bottom. So, there's some, there you go into the field and you learn the most basic concept. If you could become an auto mechanic, you learn about combustion, and you learn about gas-air mixture, and you learn about ignition systems, and you learn about all that, right? You start from the very bottom and you build your way up. So you go from understanding how gasoline, oxygen, and a spark creates an explosion, to how that drives a piston, to then how the energy from that piston is sent through a transmission, blah, 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 blah. Our field is not that way. And this is one of the hardest things. Our field, you dive in the middle. What you have to understand when you get into our field is you don't know where we're going, and you also can't fully understand where we've been, right? The technology that you're using, you are never going to fully understand routers. You're never going to fully understand switches. You're never even going to fully understand things like CPUs and RAM and all of that kind of stuff, right? Those are very complicated things. I know somebody who was going to be a CPU designer. Literally, in order to be a CPU designer, he needed to have his PhD in physics and computer engineering, I think it was. Literally. Before any of you people are like, just because Eli's not smart enough to know how the CPU works. No, literally, in order for this guy to design CPUs, he needed 2 PhDs. Hard PhDs too, not PhDs in basket weaving. So the thing is you dive in the middle, and what you have to understand is you're not going to fully understand everything. You're going to learn about packets, and you're going to learn enough about packets to be able to grasp how the TCP/IP protocol works and go from there. You're going to learn enough about processors to be able to purchase the right one for whatever requirements you need and go from there. You're going to learn enough about these things to be able to do the job that you need to do, but you will never fully understand these things. And any jackass out there that is looking at this video saying, no, Eli, maybe you don't understand everything, go to hell. Just go to hell. No, don't even. I'll take a lot of flack for a lot of things, but this is one of those things that you have to understand. You just jump into the middle of the stream and you go from there. And so that's one of the things that you have to realize when you have that problem and you're trying to solve for things. Know when to stop doing research. One of the things that you have to learn being a technology professional is to start to understand when you understand enough. Right? So when you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out port forwarding, you need to understand ports, and you need to understand external IP addresses, and you need to understand a couple of things to make that work. But the big thing is to understand when to stop learning. You have gone far enough. You don't need to go any further. You have learned enough to be able to solve the problem that's in front of you and go on. Once that problem is solved and you don't have anything better to do, fine. Go back and learn CPUs and all that to your heart's content. But that's one of the big problems that I see is a lot of people, again, I talk about perfectionists sometimes, and I talk about how much I kind of despise perfectionists because so many times oddly enough, perfectionists are the people that don't get anything done. The reason is they say, unless I completely understand this, unless I fully grasp what is going on and I have an absolute understanding of what I'm doing, I can't do anything. And you're like, well, that's great. Why don't you just give up now? Because you're never going to understand absolutely everything. So that's one of the things to be thinking about whenever you're doing the self-study is, again, you just dive in the middle. And it's a weird feeling. I still remember talking about this way back when, 15, 16 years ago, when I was learning TCP/IP, actually. But it's like, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to jump into the middle, and then you'll figure out as much as you need to know, and then you need to go from there. So you find your problem, right? You figure out your budget, you dive into, like I say, the videos, you scratch down all the notes, and then you just keep going, and then you just figure it out. You keep learning. And so that's what's going to happen is when you sit there and you watch the videos and you do Google searches, what's going to happen is you're going to start to you're just going to start to learn the things that you need to know. You're going to learn TCP/IP, and then you're going to learn about DNS, and then you're going to learn about DHCP, and then you're going to learn about port forwarding, and then you're going to be learning about this, and you're going to be learning about that, and then you're going to be learning about the other thing. And so as a technology professional, then all you do is you start with that problem, you figure out how to solve the problem, then you find another problem that is of interest to you, and then you figure out how to solve that. And then you go and you have to figure out and solve the next one, and 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 then at some point, then you actually become good in our field. And that really is all there is to self-study in order to become a technology professional. The big thing is to be able to go out there and find problems, hopefully get hired, and then just start solving the problems. The big thing that I see is a lot of people, when I get emails, you know, they say, should I get my MCSE, or should I get my CCNA, or should I do this, or should I do that, or should I do the other thing? The big problem in the modern world is that it's not that simple for technology professionals anymore. Again, I talk about way back in the good old days of, you know, the 2000 era. And the great thing back then was, it really and truly was, you learn a Windows client Microsoft client operating system, you learn a Microsoft server, you learn basic networking, and you learn how to run cable, you learn web design, you learn some very basic skills, and everybody used it, right? Everybody used Windows. Everybody used Microsoft servers. Everybody used Office. Everybody used these products. So it was very easy. So if you said, Eli, I want to become a technology professional, it was very easy to say, go out and get your MCSE. Right? But as I've talked about in my videos, and even when I talked about in the daily blobs, so I started doing daily blobs, when I did the daily blobs, I started those over 3 years ago. So those are my 2-hour talk shows, right? And what's funny to realize is how time has gone by. So when I started doing those daily blobs, people asked me whether they should still go out and get their MCSE. And so I told them, I was like, well, you know, the MCSE, it's not going to last forever, but it'll last for probably about another 5 years. So I gave a lot of people advice at that point to go out and get their MCSE. The weird thing to realize is time has ticked on. So 3 years ago, I was saying that, yeah, you know, the MCSE should still be good for another 5 years. And now it's 3 years down the road. So yeah, maybe another 2 years, right? Because the issue is that in the modern world, people are using all kinds of different technologies. Linux is actually deployed in the real world. I mean, the fact that Android, which is a Linux distribution, is everywhere, basically in everybody's pockets. The fact that with the Mac OS, the Apple operating system, that so many people are using that. Even things like, you have to understand, like with infrastructure, right? So I've been studying cloud hybrid infrastructure. So cloud hybrid infrastructure, virtual infrastructure, I think is a really awesome thing. When I sit down and I do meetings with Silicon Trailer, I have to give you guys great ideas on where the technology world is going, and I really do believe it's cloud hybrid infrastructure, right? But when you start looking at cloud hybrid infrastructure, it is just so mind-bogglingly complicated. Right? Because again, back in the old days, if you said, Eli, I want to build a server infrastructure, I'd be like, okay, well, obviously you need your cable and you need your router, your switches. Then you need, you know, basically maybe even for a small business, you need small business server, Windows small business server, great product. Even though Microsoft puts out things like Vista and Windows 8, they also put out things like Windows Small Business Server, which was absolutely awesome. But basically, you just take the server, you install the server, you know a little bit of you have to know a little bit about Active Directory, you have to know a little bit about Exchange, you have to know a little bit about SharePoint and a couple other things, but you basically install that, right? It's pretty simple to understand. If you're going to build out a bigger infrastructure, you know, we'd sit down and say, okay, how many users are you going to have? Do you need redundancy? Do you need failover protection? Okay, so we're going to put in 2 Active Directory servers. They're going to replicate to each other. We're going to put in an Exchange server. We're going to put in a SharePoint server. We're going to put in some backup thing. And that's basically, again, what everybody used. Maybe one company used one Active Directory server and another company used, 20 Active Directory servers. Maybe some company used Active Directory servers in specific sites and then had timed replication schedules. But it was basically, it was choose your flavor of Active Directory server, but it was Active Directory server, right? Maybe in VPN or networking it would get a little, then you might start going around and playing with some products. But basically everybody uses the same thing. Well, you look at like the virtual hybrid infrastructure, that is just the greatest thing in the world, that you really should be learning about if you don't know anything about it. And the issue is that Microsoft has their version of how they believe the hybrid infrastructure should work. So if you go and you take a look at Azure, again, I know I give Microsoft a lot of crap, and for Windows 8, I will give them crap for a long time, but Azure looks good. Azure hybrid infrastructure looks good. It's a really cool, awesome concept. But AWS, Amazon, so Amazon Web Services, also has their flavor of hybrid infrastructure, which again also looks pretty cool. Needs a little work, I would argue. But that's a pretty cool thing. But it's different than Microsoft. Then you come out with VMware. VMware, they're all into virtualization, so they don't want to be left in the dust. And so they have their version of hybrid infrastructure. And so here's the thing. Even if you're actually running virtualized instances of Windows Server, within these different hybrid infrastructures, the hybrid infrastructures work differently. They use different products. They use different concepts. There's different ways that you pay for things. So back in the day, if you're going to install a Windows Server, all you have to do is you have to sit down. You figure, okay, the server operating system is going to cost you $600. You have 10 users, which means you need 10 cows. It's $50 a client access license. So that means $500. So it's going to cost you $1,100 in software cost, right? Now, well, if you use Azure, they have their way of charging for things. If you use AWS has their way of charging for things. If you use VMware has its way of charging for things. So even if you're using a virtualized instance of Windows Server 2012, whether it's in Azure, whether it is in AWS, or whether it's in VMware, or whether if it's in something else, like you kind of duct tape a virtualized infrastructure using DigitalOcean, Linode, or something, right? It's just like, oh my God, it's such a big thing anymore that it's really not good enough to simply just sit down and learn like one specific product and think that's what's going to get you a job. What you need to do is you need to be working for a company, you need to be working on projects, and then based on what the requirements are, based on the resources that you have available, based on, compliance issues and all that kind of stuff, then you figure out what product you're going to use, and then you learn the hell out of it, right? So if you're sitting here and you're going, wow, Eli's really excited about hybrid infrastructure, so what you would do is you would watch a video on VMware hybrid infrastructure, then you would watch a video on AWS hybrid infrastructure, then you would watch a video on Azure hybrid infrastructure, then you would go to your boss and you say, hey, I'm really interested in this hybrid infrastructure, possibly trying to bring that into our corporation. What issues might I run into? And then your boss may sit down and say, well, we have compliance issues. So we have PCI, or we have HIPAA, or we have something like that. So then you would go back and then you would dig down into VMware, and then you would dig down into AWS, and you dig down into Azure, and you see which one of those either are or could be configured to be HIPAA compliant. So what you're going to find is one or more or whatever is easier or harder in order to make compliant for what you need, and then you focus down on the one that will work, and then you keep going that, and then you figure out what the budget is and the cost and all that kind of stuff, and then you go from there. But that's the important thing to understand, right? Is you're learning about products, you're learning about solutions, you're learning about technology based upon the problems and the situation that you are in, not simply sitting down and getting your MCSE and thinking you're going to get a job. This is the big thing I see. A lot of you guys want to learn about cloud computing. Eli, I want to be a cloud engineer. Eli, you're right. Cloud is the future. What certification do I get? It's like, I don't know. What cloud are you using right now? Oh, I'm not using any cloud right now. Right? Okay, what? How big is the company you work for? Oh, I don't work for a company. Okay, I'll go find a company to work for. Because again, whether you use Citrix or VMware or this or that or the other thing, it all depends upon a lot of different issues. And that's the problem that I see. A lot of you guys, you want to go out there and you want to get VMware certified. I'm Eli, I'm going to get VMware certified, and then I'm going to develop the cloud. And I tell you what, looking at Azure and AWS, I don't know, maybe, you know. The other problem that you run into, especially with people wanting to go out there and get these very specific certifications without trying to solve problems, is again, you run into the issue that I've talked about with things like trying to go out and get Cisco certifications or trying to come out and become a security professional or other things, where one of the things a lot of you guys don't realize is a lot of the certifications are supposed to be based upon years of experience. The important thing you have to understand here is it's not that if you get the certification, it is equivalent to so many years experience. It is that you are not supposed to go for the certification until you have so many years experience. So with MCSE, back in the day, I don't know what it is now, but it used to be, it wasn't a requirement, but it was a suggestion that Microsoft said, is that you were supposed to have 5 years experience before you go for the MCSE. Here's the important part a lot of the noobs don't understand, right? Is that when you go to work on real infrastructure, right? Especially if you're going to go into like virtualization, if you're going to be dealing with virtualization and that kind of infrastructure, if you do something stupid, you can wipe out everything. You can wipe out a company in seconds. Especially if you haven't done the backups properly, if there's no recovery option, you could literally wipe out a company in seconds. There was a startup company that went bankrupt literally overnight because they had screwed up their security, and for some reason, not only did they run their main infrastructure off of AWS, but also all of it backed up into AWS. So somebody was able to compromise the login credentials, and they were not only able to wipe out the infrastructure, which would have been bad enough, but they also wiped out all the backups. And for some reason, these jackasses didn't even think about downloading the backups so that they could re-upload them. Everything was literally on AWS. The hackers got in, deleted literally everything, and the company was gone. It was gone. All the code was gone. There was nothing to recover. The backups recovery was gone, right? And so what you have to understand is once you start dealing with infrastructure is that just because you have the certification doesn't mean people are going to trust you. They want to see what your experience has been. Have you been working for 5 years? Have you been working for 10 years? Have you deployed this solution in 5 or 6 other companies, right? Again, this is one of the reasons why I tell you experience is so important, because you go out and you learn all this fancy crap. Again, a lot of you guys, I got my CCNP or I got my whatever. I got my VMware certification. Do you think anybody, a complete noob, who simply has a certification, do you think anybody is going to trust you to touch their infrastructure? No. Hell no. Hell's no, right? So if you just go out there and again, you focus on a specific product or technology that you say, this is just what I want to learn. Screw having a problem to solve. Screw having a company or working somewhere. I'm just going to learn this. Well, the problem is a lot of times you come out and then nobody wants that. Right? So again, one of the things I talk about, so when I worked for the one company flying all over the country, they got me certified in Avaya, Definity, and Audix systems. Have you ever heard of those? Probably not. They were telephone systems, digital telephone. Definity PBX was the digital telephone switch, and then Audix was the voicemail system, right? Well, here's the thing. That company sent me to 100 hours of training on that, and I used that information for that one company. After I left that company, even as a consultant, I installed one of those telephone systems, and that was it, right? So just because you go out and you get the certifications, you get the letters behind your name and all that kind of stuff, doesn't mean that anybody actually wants that job. that skill set, right? So the thing is, what you need to do is you need to go out, you need to find the problem, then you need to start solving for the problems. And so you start learning that way, right? So you go out and you figure, I want to build an I want a server in my house that stores, where I can store a large amount of my video files. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to build your crappy little it actually would be a Samba server for this. You build your little Linux Samba server. You go through all the process of figuring out what Linux is and figuring out distributions and figuring out what Samba is, SMB, server message blocks and all that. And then you build the server and you put your hard drive in there and then you're BitTorrenting all this crap. And then all of a sudden that big hard drive you have fills up. Because when you pirate every video you can get your hands on, even a 4 terabyte hard drive fills up after a while. And then you sit there and you scratch your head. You're like, damn, I wish I had a bigger hard drive, but I've got a few of these 4 terabyte drives, but I don't know what to do. And then you go, I heard about this thing called RAID. And then you go in and you learn about RAID. And then you go and you configure your RAID. And now you have a lot more storage, right? And then you go from there. And then as you solve that problem, people go, hey, look, you're working on these computers. And you go to your parents, or you go to your church group, your grandma, who the hell ever you know. And you go, yeah, I'm really liking this computer thing. Hey, PC tune-ups are a big deal, right? Because PCs always have problems. Do you need me to fix up your computer a little bit? And again, you go, and then you learn about antivirus, and you learn about firewalls, and you learn about Windows Update Service, and you learn about all that kind of stuff, and then you go from there. And then from there, you go, and like I say, you try to get a job. Hopefully you should be trying to get a job this entire time. And so, you work on help desk, or you get a desktop support job. And here's the thing, when you get that job, no matter what company you go for, they're always going to have special things that they deal with. Like I know, again, with that company where I traveled for, we used Intermec? Oh, crap, it's been a while. It's been so long. Oh, they were very fancy scan guns back in the day. But basically what they were is they were portable computers. But they were computers that had the scan gun built in. So what you do is, like when you're working in a warehouse, when you're getting items in, you could actually scan the item and add them into the inventory database as things get scanned in, as things get scanned out. It's actually a pretty complicated thing. And so that might be the thing. So the company that you work for has something like that. Right? So you go and you learn about that. It's not necessarily Microsoft, not necessarily Apple, not necessarily Ubuntu. It's Intermec or whatever the hell the thing was called, and you learn about that, and then you learn about all the special technologies that they're using. And the thing is not only are you learning about that product, but then you're also learning about how it does things like communication. Oh, it uses this kind of wireless access point. Oh, okay, it talks to this, it uses serial, it does, and again, you start building up what you know. And then as you build what you know, as people have problems, you go, hey, I've been studying that. And then you go and you go and you go. Again, like when I learned voice over IP, after I left the company where I was traveling all the way around, I was working with a company where we were consolidating like 4 or 5 of their campuses onto one big, massive campus. It was really cool. So they were a company that was growing, apparently all the way until they weren't. Anyways, I wasn't there for that. But they're growing, and so they literally had their own campus built, and so they were bringing everybody in there. And this is when voice over IP was still relatively new, especially in the enterprise world. So they were using Cisco Call Manager back when Cisco Call Manager was built on Windows Server 2000. Strange idea there, but anyways, so since I understood telephone systems, I was helping them do some of the migration, and so since I already knew telephone systems, I was helping them do the migration for voice over IP. I then went to Cisco's website. Cisco has a massive amount of, or at least had, and I'm sure they still do, they had a massive amount of white papers on voice over IP, and so then I just sat there and I studied all their white papers on voice over IP. Didn't actually necessarily pay attention to things that were overly Cisco specific, but more just the general concepts, understanding VoIP gateways and how to route calls and all that kind of stuff. Because again, back then, being able to get away from not having to pay tolls for long distance calls was a big deal. So it was learning how the voice over IP worked. So since I was helping work on a voice over IP system, I went and I learned more about the voice over IP system. Every day I came back into work sounding just a little bit smarter, got a little bit of more authority to do things, and going from there. So that's the big thing when you're self-studying, is you need to actually be working on problems, and you need to be trying to work on technology that your company is dealing with. The other thing that's nice is, even if you don't have the authority to work on the voice over IP system, even if you don't have the authority to work on the intermec or whatever the hell they were called, the thing is if you're learning about those things, and there's people in your company that are responsible for those things, even if you're not allowed to touch them, if you have a question, you can go to those people and you can say, hey, I was looking at the intermec thing about how it connects to the database, and I don't understand this database connection they're talking about. It doesn't seem like this should work. How is this actually configured? And they go, huh, really? So you're self-studying this equipment? Yeah, okay. And then they'll sit down and they'll talk to you. Right? And again, what's the big thing in the technology world? It's all about relationships. You're on help desk, you go talk to the support person that's dealing with this type of piece of equipment, and you're showing an actual interest. Guess what? The next time a job comes up, the support position for that type of equipment, your name might get tossed around. Again, as I tell you guys, it's not what you know necessarily. It's not who you know. It's who knows you. Right? Your success in life is driven by conversations you will never know happened. This is really true. This is one thing a lot of people fundamentally don't get. And this is why I say, don't act like an asshat. Just be nice, just be polite, do your job well. Because what people don't understand is people are talking about you when you're not around, right? So if you're working in a company, and the company has 5 people on help desk and 5 people on desktop support, and then it has the higher ups. When somebody leaves desktop support, the desktop support manager is going to start talking to the other tech manager saying, yeah, crap, we need to hire somebody else for desktop support. I don't know, is anybody in the company? I don't know. I mean, I don't really care if we hire from the company or hire outside the company, but if we could hire somebody from inside the company, of course that would be easiest. Somebody says, hey, that guy came to me, he's come to me like 5 times trying to figure out how this intermec system works. I'm telling you, that person, they're motivated enough. I think you should give them the desktop support position. Oh, right. They're coming to you on your own? Yeah. Okay. Right? That conversation happens. You don't even know it happened. They come to you and go, hey, yeah, we have a desktop support position open. We'd like you to apply for it or whatever. Right? And so that's how you really go in the world of self-study. And it's what too many people don't do. I'm going to get VMware certified. Good for you. You go, boy. You go, girl. I'm not sure what it's going to do for you. It's probably not going to get you a job, but you can go for it, right? You need to go out there and you need to solve the problems. Because, like I say, a lot of people have asked me, why I don't do these classes anymore, why I do this type of video. And it really is true. It's just the modern world of technology. There is so much material out there. Again, you just go, and there's just massive amounts of material out there. The problem nowadays is it's getting so situational. So situational. Again, it's not even simply, what operating system do you use or what server you use, or it's not like, do you use cloud or do you use local? There's so many options. Again, like I say, doing my own research for hybrid cloud infrastructure. Learn hybrid cloud infrastructure. But anyway, I'm just sitting there and it's like, AWS anymore, with their cloud infrastructure, I think they've got 50 different products. You know what I'm saying? They've got 50 products, and it's like Legos, I take one of these and I take one of these and I take one of these. It's not about, I know, CloudFront. It's about, okay, I take a little bit of CloudFront, and I take a little bit EC2, and then I take a little bit of this, then I take a little bit of this, and then I put it into this, and then I create a virtual private cloud with its own security, and you know what I'm saying? And so the study material, though, the learning material out there is freely available for a lot of it, but you have to, it's like you have to understand what you're trying to solve for so that you can then piece all of these different things together and go from there. So those are the big things that I would say for self-study is find the problems, find the technology that your company is working with, and then go from there. And even if you're not working in a tech company, here's the thing, because I know a lot of you guys be like, yeah, why? But I'm not working in help desk. I'm not working in desktop support. You're talking about all these people that already have tech jobs, right? Here's the thing. Technology is everywhere. Technology is everywhere. So go into the company. If you're a flippin' fry cook, go into your McDonald's and see what technology they're using, right? Go look at their point of sale system, what are called POS systems. And then start researching POS systems. You'd be surprised how much money there is in POS repair. Go look at their surveillance system. You know, do research on surveillance systems. You know, is this a good one? Blah blah blah. You know, and that's the thing is you go to your boss and you say to your boss, hey, do you know that you can access this particular surveillance system from your smartphone? And then they go, huh? What do you mean? And you go, oh look. We install this app, we do this port forwarding, and now you can spy on us from, you know, your beach house. Oh, right? Again, being a technology professional doesn't mean you have to have a help desktop or desktop support. It's just that you're working on technology to improve your career, right? So even if you're working in one of these jobs, even if you're a warehouse worker, right? You know, those intermech systems or whatever the hell you guys are using nowadays, take a look at it. And then go home and do research about how that works. Because again, what's going to happen is, let's say you're a warehouse worker and you're scanning, or for some reason it breaks, it's not working right, or your buddy's device isn't working right, or the manager's device isn't working right. You know, you go, hey, can I see that? For, you know, the manager's like, I can't believe, this piece of crap isn't working. And you're like, hey, you know what? I've been learning a little bit about these. Can I see that for a second? You know, you do a hard reset, all of a sudden it pops up, it's working again, you hand it back to the boss, there you go, it's working for you. Why? You fixed it. Yeah, well, you know, I'm working in the warehouse because this is the job I have, but I'm not always going to be here. And then again, that manager, when there is a help desk position available or a desktop support, they may be going, you know what, I got this guy in the warehouse, I have to say, the reason you guys haven't been getting so many work orders from us is because he's been fixing all our problems. So, you know, if you want to give him a help desk position or her help desk position, that's something you might really want to think about, right? You go from there. Now, the final point that I would say is if you are going to be self-studying, the big thing to realize is that you should study for about 30 minutes to an hour a day. I would argue you should not spend that much more time studying. This is a big issue that comes up with a lot of people that want to get in the technology field is they say, Eli, I'm going to study 12 hours a day. You're like, no, you're not. You may be staring at a book 12 hours a day. You may be staring at a computer screen as sound waves bombard your ears 12 hours a day. But you're not going to be studying 12 hours a day. A very important thing to realize, especially in the technology world, is there's only so much information you can absorb. This stuff really is complicated. Again, as I try to tell people, like once you understand this stuff, it's easy money. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, once you understand how all this stuff works, and especially once you can sell it to business people, this is real easy money. Oh, it's beautiful, easy money. Once you get to my level, you have lots of options. You have lots of really wonderful, great options. Right? When you're a noob, it's really hard. It's really just like, oh my God, because again, you're diving into the middle, you're not really sure the context of things, there's vocabulary you don't understand, there's concepts you don't understand, there's just so much stuff out there. So the problem is people sit there and they think they're gonna study for 10 or 12 hours a day, and it's just crap, because after about an hour, all the information just keeps leaking out your ears. You know, it goes in and then it goes right out. You just can't absorb it that much. So what I would say is you spend 30 minutes to an hour a day studying. Now, whether you're doing YouTube videos, which I'm personally doing right now, whether you're doing Udacity or Pluralsight or CBT Nuggets, or whether you go out and you buy that book, like if you're going to learn programming languages, I would say go out and buy a book that's called Sam's in 24 hours, like PHP or Python or JavaScript, and you do 1 hour a day. Because the problem is people go and they try to study a tremendous amount, and then it all comes out their ears. Again, one thing with our field is time matters. Things don't happen as quickly as you think. Again, like, you know, there's this idea of becoming an instant success, and nobody's an instant success. You know, I've talked with CEOs of some startup companies, and it's really interesting, where they say from the point they pivoted to the point that they were, you know, getting multi-million-dollar, just massive amounts of funding and massive amounts of success was only like a year. So here's a problem. Right? Here's a problem, all you guys here, is you hear from the point they pivoted, it took a year to become a massive success. What you miss is the 6 years before that, where they were screwing around, trying to find a product worth a damn, trying to figure out something that could scale, failed 6 straight years, and then came on one idea and became successful. Again, like I say, with a lot of people that seem like they're successful overnight, there's a lot of time that went into it. Again, a lot of, you know, you look at an 18 or 19-year-old going out there, maybe making a lot of money, maybe have a lot of respect, has a very good job. In our mind, we don't think that people do real work until they turn 18. So if you think of that, you go, well, they're 19 years old. It means they were able to go from nothing to something impressive in a year. What you don't look at is that kid started programming when they were 10 years old. So really, they have 9 years experience. And let's be honest, one of the things as you get older, you realize that the benefits kids have is they spend a lot more time on things that they care about than older people do. Again, like I said, when I was a kid, like you would sit there and you would spend 12 hours programming or coding or doing wacky stuff just because you enjoyed it. Whereas you get to be an adult, you get done with the day and you go home. So, you know, like I say, that person may have 9 years experience. So one of the things is a lot of people feel like, no, I need to do 10 hours a day. I'm going to cram all this material in and that's how I'm going to be successful. And you literally just simply can't cram the material in. It takes time, especially for learning. So if you are going to be working on things, let's say 12 hours a day, the way you do it is you learn for 30 minutes to 1 hour a day, and then you work on projects after that, right? So you learn, you know, let's say you're learning a programming language, you spend an hour and learning how to connect your code to a database, right? So this is how you connect to a database. This is how you insert information to a database. This is how you pull information out of a database. You learn that in an hour. Then what you may do is you may then spend the next 8 hours developing some little test app that takes information out of a forum, dumps it into a database. Then you're able to go to a reporting system that then provides you a report based on that. Again, you're only actually learning for an hour, and then you're playing with what you learn. So that's an important thing to understand. Because yeah, if you just sit there and you just try to cram all this stuff in your head, it's just going to spend 30 minutes to an hour, learn, and then from there play with the stuff. Because again, that's going to be one of the big things, is just getting the experience, sitting there coding, building servers, seeing what all the problems are. In the real world, so many of the issues we deal with are simply things that aren't taught in school. You know, when you're dealing with the MCSE, they don't teach you how to deal with flaky hard drives. Right? You know, when you're sitting there and you go to install an operating system and it gets 90% of the way through and then fails, you know what's going on there. Been doing this a while, you understand it's a failed hard drive, right? But they don't teach you that in the MCSE program. They don't teach you that in the MCSE books. So you sit there and you go through the process, and then you're getting that experience, whether you're installing Windows Server 2012 on your own system or whether you're installing it for a company. That's still experience every time you install it. So you just go through and you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and then you get better and better and better, and then you go from there. So those are my thoughts. is getting dark now. It's getting dark, but those are my thoughts on self-study. I would definitely take everything I'm saying here to heart, because again, the world is different. And the problem that I see is so many people are taking life lessons from old folks. Old folks. Hey, I'm about to be 39. I can say I'm old now. And that's the thing, like how I got into this field, it's just not the same world. Again, like I say, I mean, Internet of Things or hybrid cloud infrastructure, there's a lot of amazing technology, but finding specific companies that are using it, you know, in order to get ahead, that can be complicated. So you spend all your time learning Internet of Things, and then the company that you work for needs you to know hybrid cloud infrastructure, right? Ugh. Get what I'm saying? So just focus on that and go from there. Learn the products that are actually going to solve the problems that you have, and learn the products that your company is using. Now the thing is if you do decide, you're like, no, Eli, this is crap advice. I want to learn Internet of Things. I want to learn Internet of Things. That's what I want to do. You're just trying to get me to do hybrid cloud. Here's the thing. Then what you need to do is you need to put yourself into the situation where you will be around people that need support in that type of technology. So let's say you want to do Internet of Things. Again, Internet of Things is a multi-trillion-dollar thing, so I'm not saying anything about Internet of Things, right? So then if you're like, okay, Internet of Things, but I need to start solving real problems, and I need to be working around people that are dealing with. So that's where you go to Meetup, you know, meetup.com, or like the Maker Movement. So the Maker Movement are all these people using 3D printers and Arduino boards and Raspberry Pis to create wacky computer things. So then maybe you just go and you get into the Maker Movement. So whether there's meetups, there's a lot of maker conventions and get-togethers and all that kind of stuff. And so you go there and you start talking with those people, and you start seeing what problems those people need solved, right? And then you just keep going. So that's the thing. So if there is some technology, you're like, no, I want to do cloud, or I want to do Internet of Things, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, then again, don't start with the damn certification. Don't start with the books. What you need to do is you need to go get into that group and then see what they're actually interested in. You know, see where it's going. Again, you know, if you're looking at Internet of Things, do you focus on Raspberry Pis? Do you focus on Arduino boards? Do you focus on Intel system on a chip? Or do you focus on, I was talking with this one guy who did Internet of Things, and Texas Instruments actually has a stupidly inexpensive little system on a chip computer. But so few people talk about it because it's like one of those industrial things, like you buy them by the 200s, but you could literally buy like 200 of these things for the cost of a few Raspberry Pis. And they're just as powerful depending on what you need. And so you might go there, and you may have been thinking, oh, I'm going to learn Raspberry Pi, you're going to learn Arduino. You may go there, you start talking to somebody, and they're talking about these little Texas Instrument things, and you're like, oh my golly, that's amazing. And so then you focus and you learn Texas Instrument things, and blah, 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 blah. So there we go. That is the thought. That is my thought on self-study, and that is the best way to go. Because again, if you just dive in and you just literally try to learn this stuff, again, like I say, for me, learning about this stuff with hybrid cloud is, I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand everything. I mean, it's not like, oh, this is so insane, I can't keep up with it. But I literally, after all these years of doing videos for you guys, I have no idea how to dissect it down into concepts that are going to make that much sense. You know, it's like there are just so many different building blocks in this new world, and every single vendor has different building blocks, and it's all just like, how do you, right? It's just like, right? So it's much more about you figure out what you want to solve for, you figure out what technology you can actually get your hands on, and go from there. And you will be much, much more successful. Do not go for the VMware certification just to do it. I've had a lot of people say that. I want to go for the VMware certification. You're like, no. Unless you're working for a company that uses VMware, don't do it. Anyways, so those are my thoughts. My butt is getting a little sore. I'm sitting here on these piles of wood that are just sitting out here for whatever reason. It is weird, like you go to different places in the country and you see the most random things. And one of the random things out here in South Dakota is you see these massive, just stacks of what's it called, ponderosa pine? And I don't understand why, really. Because it seems like it should be good wood. But it's all like, at this point, it gets dry and rotten. So it's not like, you know, some places in the country you go and they've chopped down the wood and you know it's going to get turned into boards or whatever. Here, you just see these massive, massive, massive piles of dead trees, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when you figure that they complain about wildfires. They're like, oh no, wildfires are so horrible. And then you look around, and then there are just massive, massive, massive piles of dead trees. And you're like, you know, if you're worried about wildfires, you might want to get rid of all those dead trees. I don't know, just kind of my thought. But yeah. So anyways, my butt is hurting right now, so I guess I will be off. So yeah, so there we go. Those are some thoughts. Take them, leave them. I don't know. I'm just doing my thing. So funny. I got this really like snarky comment from somebody about Silicon Trailer yesterday. Thankfully, Google just dumped it right into the spam bin, but I read it in the spam bin. And it really was funny. It was like this guy was saying, yeah, well, prove to me why I should come to Silicon Trailer. Prove to me why I should take my time to come and talk with you. And it was like, no. It's so funny with the modern world and people. It's like, you know, guys, I'm doing this stuff, I'm talking with these people, I know some things. If you guys want to come and talk to me, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk with you about your problems. But like this idea, why should I listen to you? So feel free, just so you guys know, feel free to ignore everything that I say. It is completely a-okay to watch all of my videos and then do the exact opposite. I am not here to fight with anybody or argue with any. Again, I keep trying to say that with this whole thing, like with unsubscribe or whatever. I am giving you guys the best advice that I know. And I'm not necessarily even saying that it's the best advice. It's the best advice that I know. And from what I can see out there, from other people giving advice, I think it's pretty darn good advice compared to what everybody else is giving. So, but feel free to ignore everything I say. It was so fun. I got that message yesterday. Tell me why I should spend my time. I'm like, no, I don't want to meet you. You sound like an asshole. But anyways, with that, we will call it a day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. And just in case you're wondering how orange Eli can be, yes, in fact, this is the clothing that I wear every day. I have my nice orange shirt and my nice orange hat. I am the Orange Man. So if you're wondering, it's like, I wonder if Eli actually wears that orange in the real world. Yes, not only do I wear the shirt in the real world, but when I'm wandering around, I wear my hat. And the other thing too, they do not sponsor me at all, but this is an Under Armour Hunter's hat. I have to say, if you want a baseball cap, go out and buy an Under Armour hat. This is the best hat I think I've ever owned in my life. One, it's really comfortable. But two, it uses like their special material. And so like when I'm out here and getting all sweaty and nasty and all this kind of stuff, it dries really quickly. And it also does not stink and does not stain the way that all of my other baseball caps have. So like when I'm used to like you go out and you get all sweaty and nasty, you get all those weird sodium stains on your hats. And the one thing that I will say, at least with this Under Armour hat, is I don't get any of those weird nasty sodium stains. So that's just your little random piece of advice if you go out and start adventuring in the world. If you go out adventuring in the world, buy yourself an Under Armour hat, because even their hats are pretty good. Anyways, with that, we'll call it a day, and see you at the next one of these videos. Ow. Oh, damn. Ow. Oh, shit. I really do actually hurt. Ow. Ow. Ow.
Grow out from the wall, forming this great raised formation. And over time will get bigger and bigger. Areas on that side of the state. So, for those decide to drive all the way across South Dakota, you may have noticed it's a bit of a bore. They bring, about every 2 weeks, they bring you up your rations, so your groceries and stuff.